So I cannot get this loaded to YouTube, so we're going to do this a different way. And we're going to start it from here. We're going to go play full screen, and I'm hoping you can hear what I have
Hello
recorded.
there, and welcome to day 2 of Road Trip with Mrs. Zip. Today we're going to be going to the Badlands. The Badlands are located in South Dakota, a little more to the west than I was yesterday. The Badlands are actually geological deposits. Some might think by looking at this that maybe a glacier carved it out, because that's normally what we see in Wisconsin. Is anytime we have big hills or moraines and things like that, it's actually caused by glaciers carving it out. That is not the case in the Badlands. It's actually made through, like I said, geological deposits. So when we have erosion and deposition, that's how these are made. So nothing is really carved out per se. These are very rich fossil beds, lots and lots of fossils, and I'll talk about the different layers and all the fossils that you can find in them. The Badlands are over 244,000 acres. It's a mixture of prairie, like grassland, and the buttes, which you can see here. Buttes are isolated hills with steep sides and flat tops. This took over 1 million years to occur, so it didn't just occur overnight or in a few hundred years. It actually took millions of years to erode. It does erode about 1 centimeter per year. They do figure that in the next 500,000 years, it will be completely eroded away, so the Badlands will be no more. Thankfully, that won't be in your lifetime, but it is planned not to be there in about 500,000 years. As I said before, it is built because of deposition and erosion. So usually you can't have deposition if you don't have erosion first. The two main kinds of erosion we normally find are water and wind. They tend to do the most damage and erode away rocks the easiest. So what happens when you have water or wind that takes sediment or rocks or sand, whatever the case might be, and it pulls it away from the rock, the mountain or the hill or whatever it might be, and it pulls it away, and eventually that water or that wind slows down. At that time, it gets deposited. So it gets dropped and deposited where it is. And you can see the deposition in these different layers. You can see the different sedimentary layers, almost like layers of a cake. They have occurred because of natural forces. It wasn't like somebody like Mount Rushmore, which we'll be talking about tomorrow. It wasn't like that. These were actually made through erosion. One of the forces was actually shallow inland seas. All of the Badlands in South Dakota were underwater at one time. There were inland seas. And we know that because there were fossils dug up, which only were marine animals. The other thing that caused the erosion were some rivers and wind. The rivers include the Cheyenne and the White Rivers that carved through the landscape. They have, right now, there isn't as much deposition going on as there is erosion. So again, not necessarily from water, but from a lot of wind. Many people think that the Badlands only are in Badlands National Park in South Dakota. It's actually not true. Badlands are a geological term, so just like an island or a butte or a mesa. So it's a geologic concept. So the Badlands with a capital B talks about the place in South Dakota. Badlands with a lowercase b talks about a geological feature. So that geological feature is made up of soft sedimentary rocks that erode very easily. Again, sedimentary rock is when you have sediments that come together, so usually through deposition, and you have different types of rocks that basically come together. So examples of sedimentary rocks are conglomerates and limestone. We talk about three different types of rocks. Sedimentary. Metamorphic is caused by heat and pressure, usually a squeezing inside the earth. The type of material or rock that we get from that is gneiss or marble. The next is igneous rock, which occurs when magma cools and hardens. The types of rock we see with igneous rock are basalt and obsidian. The types of rocks that we find in the Badlands are sandstones, claystones, limestone, siltstone, mudstone, volcanic ash, and shale. Most of the rock do come from ancient river channels, and some come from calcium-rich groundwater, so it actually comes up through the ground. There are four different layers that we can see. There's a lot more layers, but the main layers, there's four different. So it's important to remember that we're always going to find the oldest layers on the very bottom. We call that the law of superposition. The law of superposition states younger over older. So all of the young rocks are on the top, so the newest rocks, and all of the oldest rocks are down at the bottom. As you can see through many of these, there are a lot of different layers. So the oldest, so the ones nearest the bottom, are called Pierre Shale, and it was deposited between 75 and 69 million years ago. These were deposited by shallow inland seas. Actually, the name of that sea was the Western Interior Seaway. It actually spanned from the Gulf of Mexico to the Arctic Ocean. So it really took up most of North America, at least the United States. So the seas actually caused a lot of that deposition to occur. How we know that this was covered in water is because we actually found ancient marine life. So not we, but the paleontologists who study this area, who study the rocks, they found in this layer a lot of ancient marine life, marine meaning water mammals or animals. They did not find any dinosaurs. The reason for that is dinosaurs can't swim. They did find shelled cephalopods and a mosasaur, which is a giant marine reptile that actually is 50 feet long. So it's a very, very large marine animal. The next layer is the yellow mounds, and you can see these very clearly in some of my pictures. It doesn't look very old in some of them because a lot of the top layers have been eroded away, or there hasn't been any deposition on the top of them. But the yellow mounds are very, very clear because they're yellow. It's an altered version of Pierre Shale. It kind of, after the Western Interior Seaway, that body of water I was talking about, drained, the yellow mounds were left. And basically it weathered into soil, and that was the leftover shale was preserved in the yellow mounds, which gives it its yellow color. The type of animals that we have found in this layer are called paleozoes, which actually, sorry, take that back, it's not an animal. Paleosoils, which is basically fossilized soil preserved in rock records. So there's something called the geologic column, and my sixth graders should know this because we've talked about it. And basically, we can compare rocks all over the world, and we can determine their relative date, their relative age to each other based on where it is in that geologic column. So this fossilized soil, we're able to date how old it is approximately. But it was very brightly colored. The mustard color, so like that yellowish color, comes from the rock geophyte. The next layer is the Chadron Formation. It's light gray claystone beds. You can see the different layers. You can see that lighter color. That's the Chadron Formation. It was deposited about 37 to 34 million years ago. The environment at that time was hot and wet, almost like the Florida Everglades. So very, very hot, wet, muggy, sticky, kind of like Wisconsin sometimes in the summer. The type of animals they actually found here in this layer were alligators. Alligators and other marine type, animals that can survive in like the Everglades. The next layer is the Brule Formation. It was deposited between 34 and 30 million years ago. During this time, when this was deposited, it was a much cooler and drier climate. They do believe that it was more of an open savanna type area, so a lot of grazers that lived there. One of them is the oreodont, and that would be the grazer. And then predators of the oreodont are the Nimmerrabbit, that's how you pronounce it, which is almost like a cat, but bigger, and it has saber teeth. So it's a different type of, I guess I'd be in the cat family, kind of like a tiger or something like that. The top layer is the youngest, and that's called the Sharps Formation. It was deposited 30 to 28 million years ago, and it was mainly deposited from Rocky Ford ash, which is the volcanic tuff. So basically, there was a volcano, and there were eruptions in the Great Basin, which is Utah and Nevada. That ash was actually carried all the way over to South Dakota by winds and deposited in the Badlands. So we have another layer, which is the youngest layer, and that is that volcanic ash. So those are the different layers. As you can see, the only animals we saw were the bison and the bighorn sheep. The bighorn sheep, we actually were able to see, they were like grazing on the side of the road. The same with the bison. And as we got closer, you could actually see them in some of the rocks. So if you look closely through some of the pictures, you might actually be able to see them. I tried taking pictures of them, but we were kind of far away. And they have amazing camouflage that allows them to really blend in with their surroundings. We didn't find any other animals. Those were the only two types of animals that we found. I didn't feel like in the rocks there were many places for animals to live. I did see a bird of some sort too, like a hawk. It looked like. But yeah, I didn't see very many like cave kind of places or, places for animals to hide and live. So I'm sure they do find some, but we couldn't find any. Tomorrow tonight we went to Mount Rushmore, but that would have been an extremely long video if I would have done the Badlands and Mount Rushmore tomorrow. So the Mount Rushmore is actually going to take 2 days, because I do have a lot of information about it. So we'll do that, Wednesday and Thursday. You will have Mount Rushmore material. I got some pretty cool videos tonight. But yeah, so that was it for the Badlands. Oh, your assignment or your activity. There is a game that you can play in Google Classroom under the Badlands, Day 2, the Badlands. That game is talking about different kinds of rocks. You can collect rocks and stuff like that. So it's just kind of a fun game. The other thing is there's I I don't even know, there's like 6 pages, and it says welcome to Badlands National Park. It has some information on it. So what you're going to do is cut on a dotted line, and then it kind of makes like a flip book, and it has some information, a lot of the stuff that I just shared with you. But then you can also, there are all animals, and some of them you might have to look up because I did not tell you about all of them. But you can cut the animals and put it in, if you can put it maybe on the back of the sheet in the layer that it is in. And that way you can kind of remember where those animals go. So that's kind of the activity that goes with today. Again, even if you just watch the video, you are still getting something. But the little flip book looks pretty cool too. So you can go ahead and do that or play the game that I have attached. I think that's it. I hope you all have a great day. If you have any questions or comments, I do have a challenge question that I'm going to post on here as well. So it is a picture of my I don't even know what you call it, my little display in my car. And I want you to tell me what you notice that's kind of strange about it, or a question that you might have about it. And then see if you can come up with the answer for it. It'll make sense when you see the picture, hopefully. But kind of look at all the numbers on it and see if you can kind of find out anything that's strange, and then come up with an answer to why that's strange. But that is all I have for you. I hope you guys have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.